Interestingly, the people who leave the Earth for a time go and enjoy a luxury cruise. It's basically a cruise ship that they all go on. It's all going to be entertaining and fun, and they can indulge themselves yet further, and then eventually they can just come back and do the same thing again. So the assumption is that human nature is not going to change.
Welcome to Popcorn Parenting, a podcast about movies, mythology and the Messiah. I'm James Cary and I'm joined as ever by the one and only reformed mythologist, Nate Morgan Locke. Hello, Nate.
Hello, Jan.
It's great to be talking to you via the interweb, and we're talking about a brilliant movie today that I'm very excited about. What is it?
It is the absolute masterpiece that is Pixar's WALL-E. WALL-E. That's the film.
It is a masterpiece to the point where I watched it again last night and I thought if I'd made that movie, I'd just retire, because I would think I'm not going to do better than that.
No.
Especially given that Toy Story 2 is in the past, because that is the perfect movie. That's one for another episode. Here are some cold hard facts about WALL-E, which was released in June 2008, and it runs for 97 minutes, and it costs $180 million to make. And at the box office, it took $500 million, 533 million, and I'm sure it's been making more. It's probably made that again in the last 12 years. It was directed, produced, screenplay, story by Andrew Stanton, and Jim Reardon and Pete Docter are sort of between them responsible for this movie. We should do an In a World, shouldn't we?
In a world, or rather, on a world in which human beings have desecrated all that is created with their wasteful consumption and detritus, Earth has been abandoned. The people of the Earth have climbed aboard, by and large, starliners. And the quote is, "We'll clean up the mess while you're away." It's supposed to be a 5-year voyage on the Axiom, which is the greatest of the Starliner fleet. And the people of Earth will take a little break off the Earth whilst the WALL-E machines clean it all up and get rid of all the rubbish. They're waiting for the Earth to be renewed. And then finally, when it will be renewed, they can recolonize, repopulate the Earth once more.
And what's really interesting is that it doesn't feel like an eco movie, because as you start watching it, it is horrifying at the start, and you do really think, oh, because it's recognizably Western civilization, and it is absolutely skyscraper high with rubbish. So that really comes across, and then they really don't dwell on that, and they kind of move on and tell a much more interesting story.
It is. But interestingly, the people who leave the Earth for a time go and enjoy a luxury cruise. It's basically a cruise ship that they all go on. It's all going to be entertaining and fun, and they can indulge themselves yet further, and then eventually they can just come back and do the same thing again. So the assumption is that human nature is not going to change, that we'll ruin the planet, and then we'll just go and, they try and populate the moon, but of course WALL-E flies past that at one point. So it does have this sense that humans are their own worst enemies. We just, we make a mess and then we move on, and we don't really seem to repent of it. So it's just an interesting take on the kind of, as you say, the Western world, and the way that we just want more and more stuff. And we're, just very wasteful.
Yeah. So the aim of this podcast is ultimately to give you a little bit of stuff to think about, so that you can talk to your kids about the movie, having watched it together. So don't be alarmed by any of the things that Nate says in the rest of the podcast. This is not stuff that you're meant to be telling your kids necessarily, but it's kind of cheat notes. York notes, background reading.
Yeah.
It's a head start. And actually your conversation may go in a completely different direction, and that's completely fine. And the basic rules are still very much, after you've seen it, ask them, what was your favourite bit?
What did you like?
Yeah.
Who did you like? What did
Yeah.
they say that was funny? What did they say
Yeah.
that was fun? Did you cry? Did you get
Yeah.
angry? Did you like the ending?
Yeah.
Just
And then,
normal questions about films and books and things,
yeah.
James.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
normal questions.
And then you can normally get quite a long way with the question, why? What was your favourite bit? I like that bit. Why? What bit was sad? Oh, this
Yeah.
bit. Why was that sad?
Yeah.
And so that was, so we had a chat about it afterwards, and it didn't go in the direction I thought it would go in at all.
Okay, go on.
And,
What happened?
Well, no, only in that we had a quick WhatsApp consultation beforehand, and I said, any idea what I should be asking them afterwards? And you said, does this story remind you of anything? And afterwards, I said to my kids, does that story remind you of anything? And they said, I suppose it's a bit like, when people think that what they do doesn't really matter, but actually it really does matter later. We'd made a mess and it didn't seem to matter.
Yeah.
And also people think it doesn't matter what you think about Jesus, but it does matter. And I'm just like, oh, okay, wow, this is not...
Okay.
And so the thing that really struck me and we ended up talking about was how the people on the ship were presumably happy, but there was a real sense of futility to their consumption.
Did they say that? Did your girls actually say there was a real sense of futility to their consumption?
They did. They did not.
I would love it if they'd said that.
Yeah.
Direct
But I think
quote.
it was... Yeah, but I think it was interesting. That's what struck us particularly.
Yeah.
Was the fact that we're actually made to do stuff, and in the movies, it's a revelation that the captain actually has to do something, and that he then wants to do it, and he's sort of angry that he's been, rejected and frozen out.
Yeah.
By his own technology. So we talked a bit about that.
And that is that whole thing of careful what you wish for, and that maybe what you want isn't what you need, and just that challenge for kids to come to a realization that, just sitting with your feet up, eating snacks and drinking a cupcake in a cup, watching a screen might be fun for a little bit of time, but for 700 years, James, that's not a very good way to spend your time.
And the fact that they're not even doing sport, they're watching robots do
exactly
sport.
Isn't that brilliant? It's one of the things I love about the film is the way that they tee up, you'll like this, they tee up the life on the Axiom by showing you real human beings doing activities like they were on a cruise ship. So there is a guy who's playing golf, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, when they actually show you what's happening on the Axiom, once Wally and Eve get there, there's a guy on his lazy boy hover chair who's literally playing the game and controlling the robot to do the thing that he was supposed to do. And you think, wow, isn't that remarkable? And the fact that those chairs, they set that up because they say, with our hover chairs, even grandma can join in the fun. And it's the old lady who, for reasons of sort of just getting old, can't join in, and then you get there and literally everyone's decided, oh, I need a hover chair. It's brilliant. It's such a brilliant understanding of the sorts of ways that people think. This is what we you set the bar that low, you give people the option, and people just start to slide into this just lazy. And one of the things we noticed whilst we were watching it, because we watched it this week as well, and our sofa has those things where you pull it back and the legs go up so you can recline. So we're literally eating popcorn, staring at a screen with our feet up, judging them for sitting in a lazy boy eating whilst watching a screen. So it's just so condemning as a film, but so kind of gentle with it. If you say, it doesn't feel like you're being preached at all. It's just fantastic.
The other reflection was also, I think the first time I watched it, the thing that is astonishing, and the thing I remembered from it the most, is the fact that those two robots have more humanity than almost any other character I can remember seeing. You know, Wall-E's desire for companionship is so moving. It's so, you know, and he just wants to hold Eva's hand.
Yeah. It's so simple.
And it's just that I'm afraid, you know, my oldest is just like that. She just wants to hold your hand.
Yeah.
You know, and she'll take any excuse she can just to hold your hand. And it's beautiful, isn't it? And actually, when I was describing, my wife couldn't watch the rest of the movie because she had to go somewhere, and she'd seen it before. But when she said, "How does it end?" Can you remember? How does it end for all the people on the ship when they come back to Earth? I said, it's kind of weird how that kind of doesn't matter, because I guess they figure it out. Because it's so not about them. It's about these two robots. It's incredible.
There's an interesting thing because there's...
what should I have said?
No, it's just that the closing credits, they go that, which are beautiful as well. They take all these kind of classic artworks throughout history and then kind of show the human beings and the robots rebuilding civilization, and almost like they've started again.
Yeah.
So we're going to almost redo human history, but maybe we'll get it right this time. And that, I just, you know, it's sort of a stunning idea that maybe we shouldn't give up on the world. The world isn't going to be completely lost, but it might be restored and renewed. So when the plot twist, I suppose, is that they decided fairly early on that they were never going to come back to the Earth. And Otto, or Autopilot, he says, he kind of shows this classified film to the captain, and Shelby Forthright, the CEO of By and Large, he sort of says, don't worry, just stay up there, enjoy yourselves. The world, you know, it's all gone wrong.
We can't fix it.
We can't fix it. And I think what we feel at that moment is, so there is no hope for the world. Is that what you're saying? Are you saying there's no chance? That's it. It's ruined and lost forever. And there's something about Pixar's brilliance in terms of their storytelling is that they say maybe there is something seriously wrong with the world, but maybe there's hope for it too.
Yeah.
And I think they speak better than they know at one level. But yeah, there's that whole kind of cosmic scale of the film in terms of human nature and the world and all that sort of stuff. But to go back to it's a romantic comedy. It's a dystopian romantic comedy between two robots. That's what Wall-E is. And Wall-E as a character, he's really good. And we talked about this before, but how writing a kind of innocent or good character is really tricky because they might not come across as very likable or relatable. But Wall-E, because he's kind of vulnerable and lonely and kind of innocent, we're all on his side to start with. And he loves art and he's listening to, you know...
is it Hello Dolly or something, isn't it?
I can't remember. I didn't know what film it was, but he loves little things. He loves, you know, plastic forks, plastic spoons, sporks. How do they fit in between the two? Yeah. He loves that little bat with a ball on the end of an elastic thing. He loves Rubik's cubes. And he loves the arts and he appreciates things. He's interested in beauty. And then, of course, he falls in love with Eve, and so he's kind of desperate to go with her. But I think he as a character, he's so well written, and maybe the fact that he doesn't speak a lot helps that.
Yeah.
And I think it's similar to some other characters you get, like Paddington Bear. So Paddington Bear is a similarly innocent character who sort of exposes other people as you go along.
So what should I have been saying, or what what? Give us some other ways of thinking about this movie and how it maybe relates to Eden, the garden, and the second garden, the garden to come.
Yeah. So did you, because I was purposefully ambiguous when I was texting you yesterday. So I just said, does it remind you of anything? So in your head, what were you thinking it might remind you of?
Well, I guess there was something Eden about it.
Okay.
And I guess there's something Revelation about it as well. The second garden about it and the restoration.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that she's called Eve, is kind of a bit of a shove in that direction.
Yeah.
And but then the fact that the Nate Morgan Locke house rules of you watch the end credits to the bitter end.
Yes,
I mean
you do.
that is heavily rewarded in this movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really it's stunning.
But
what were you thinking of?
So this is my view on WALL-E, is that the film WALL-E is a retelling of Noah's Ark.
Right.
So the Earth.
How did I not see that? Okay, great.
But it's so clear. It's so clear.
Yeah.
The Earth is flooded with pollution, right? Human consumption and greed and indulgence has meant that the Earth is going to be covered in filth, in judgment, if you like. They're going to reap the kind of reward of their sin, which is that Earth is no longer inhabitable. So the solution is everyone's going to get on a ship, right? You're going to get on the Axiom,
right,
and you're going to stay on the Axiom until the pollution has been dealt with, right?
Yeah.
From the ship, you send out a white bird, if you like, a dove.
Ah.
And the white bird is sent out to retrieve vegetation, a plant. So Eve comes from the Axiom down and finds, after exploding, like shooting so many things and knocking over all those oil tankers and all that sort of stuff. And then she finds the plant. So the dove, if you like, finds the olive leaf. And now that directive is complete, right? So she's now going to go back.
Yes.
And the assumption is once she gets back with the leaf, okay, the floodwaters have receded or the pollution's gone and we can now repopulate the Earth. So very basically, that is the story of Noah's Ark. And the question, I suppose, we'll come back to the dove thing in a minute, because I think that's like incredible when you look through the Bible and think about doves. But when they get onto the ship and there's this question of, is the Earth too far gone? Right? Do they just stay on the ship forever and forget about the Earth? Let's just, pretend it didn't happen and just leave it to decay. There's something about God's promise that he gives to Noah that he won't destroy the Earth, that he did save a remnant, that even though all of man's heart was full of sin and depravity and selfishness and greed, even from childhood, that God still loves it despite that and will redeem it. And so Noah and his family and the animals on the ark becomes this picture of God's ability to save a few people despite the fact that he's going to judge, and this plan to make a new world, a new creation where you can repopulate it and you can sort of bring about the joy and the glory again. So on the kind of macro level of the story of WALL-E, it is essentially Noah's Ark. So the fact she's called Eve, right? This is brilliant. Why does Adam, who's responsible for naming things in Genesis, why does Adam name his wife Eve? Do you remember that?
Oh, because she came from a man's rib? That doesn't really answer the question, though, does it?
That's why she's called woman, because she was drawn out of man.
Oh, okay.
But the reason she's called Eve.
Oh, I know. Adam just always really liked the name.
Yeah. It just goes about Adam and Eve. Like, it sounds like they fit.
It just sounds right. But I guess there's a theological reason too, right?
So, yeah, Genesis 3, after the fall after Adam and Eve have eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, And God comes to judge Adam and Eve and the serpent. It's actually in the opposite order. It's serpent, then Eve, and then Adam. And the very final thing he says to Adam is, "For dust you are, to dust you will return. You will surely die." And then the next sentence is, "And Adam named his wife Eve, because she would become the mother of all the living." So Eve means living, basically.
Right.
So God literally just said, "For dust you are, to dust you will return." Adam named his wife Eve, for she would become the mother of all the living. And you're like, is that kind of sarcastic? Are you trying to kind of like, you've literally just been told you will die?
Yeah.
But when God spoke to Eve, he says, from your offspring, I will put enmity between the offspring of the serpent and the woman. He says it to the serpent, but he will crush your head and you will strike his heel. So the offspring of the serpent and the offspring of the woman are going to be in conflicts throughout the rest of the Bible. And when Adam calls his wife Eve, he's saying, no, there's hope in the face of judgment. There's hope despite the fact that everything's gone wrong, because there will come someone born of the woman. There is a chance that, well, not just a chance, there is a promise that things will be restored. And that's what's kind of so brilliant about the fact that they connect in Wall-E, they connect Eve and the hope of the living with the dove, which goes out to find the olive branch. So you're thinking, okay, so we're supposed to see some sort of connection between this hope from the Garden of Eden and this hope that comes in the story of Noah. And we're supposed to put them together. Now, here's your next question, James, which I did put it on the WhatsApp, but your conversation went in a different direction, and that's fine, and that's okay. Fine. You don't need to worry. Fine.
Please affirm me. Please affirm me.
But where else do you see a dove in the Bible?
Oh, yes. So we see the Holy Spirit descending like a dove.
Like a dove, right?
At the baptism of Jesus.
The baptism of Jesus. So coming out of the water and receiving the dove, this is the hope for the new creation. This is the hope that the world is not going to be just completely annihilated and God doesn't love us anymore. The hope of the nations is that Jesus Christ has come and is about to go and save us. And back to Wall-E, and to see that in the story, Wall-E and this hopeful character gets connected to the character of Eve, who to be honest, I mean, she's beautiful, but she's cruel and she's brutal, right? She can destroy everything. And yet she softens to Wall-E and sees his kind of love and sees his compassion and sees his tenderness. And so the story, the character who goes through the biggest change in the film of Wall-E is Eve.
Yeah. It's her movie, isn't it?
And she's kind of convinced, and that's why it's such a brilliant romantic comedy, because she tries to kill him several times, and eventually these two together will be integral to the hope of the world. So it's just such and the fact that it does this storytelling with so few words is just remarkable. Most people who watch Wall-E do get excited about it. I think people tend to forget it quite quickly.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd forgotten and not realised how good it was until I watched it the second time. Yeah. And watching it a second time round, I'm just thinking, I don't think I've seen many better movies in my life than that movie. Yeah. It's so good. Yeah. So in a way, we had very different experiences talking about it. Can we just wrap up and just sort of say how important it is that you don't have to have a structured conversation that lands on a Christian truth within 45 minutes of having seen this film. Yeah. Because if you've watched this film together, they will remember you watching the film together for years. Yeah. Yeah. And they'll probably see it again and see something different. And there may be a conversation you have in 8 years' time. Totally.
And that whole thing of the pressure's off. If you're and we've talked about this before, the challenge of being a Sunday school teacher with a group of children is that you've got 30 minutes or maybe more to get a thing taught to them and illustrated and all that. And there's a central teaching point and there's all this kind of pressure. And parenting doesn't work like that. Parenting is this, it is a journey, and it's over, a decade or more that you spend this time discussing these sorts of things, and they may come up. And one of the things I just to encourage people, I suppose, that these films can become a part of your family discussion or part of your conversations together, is that the quotations, right? Wall-E is full of them. Foreign contaminant, directive, Wall-E. And even just saying things in those kind of silly robotic ways is bringing back what a joyful time that was watching that film, and may inspire you to talk about some more about it, or to watch it again, or whatever it is. But I mean, I think the reason we're picking the films we're picking for this podcast is because they are all worthy of rewatching several times. And if a film lands for you and your family, if that becomes something that you revisit a few times, then the conversation at some point is going to go deeper.
Yeah.
And this podcast is designed so that if it were to go deeper, you've already got an idea of where else it might go, that conversation. Yeah. But it's not, as you say, it's not about within 45 minutes of the closing credits, you've got to have taught them this.
But also see that the Bible picks up on these same sorts of themes as the truly great transcendent modern storytellers of our age. The big story is the Christian story.
And I think you're supposed to fall in love with these characters. You're supposed to love Wall-E. Ask yourself, why do we love him? What's so great about him? And one of the things that's so great about him is that he's hopeful, and he's compassionate, he's kind, and those are qualities that we want in our children. And those are, not that we want to sort of divorce them from their origin and where we discover that in the Bible, but that Wall-E's a great role model in some ways, and your kids are going to want role models. They're going to have them, whether they're supposed to or not. And his hopefulness and his love of beautiful things,
and his perseverance.
He loves investigating. He loves science.
He's playful. He's curious.
It's brilliant. He's absolutely fantastic.
So I just want to interject here by saying that this is sort of the end of the show, but there is a bit extra at the end. Nate's got some extra little nuggets, which I wanted to give you the option of having a listen to. So after we wrap up, if you want to hold the line for a bit, there'll be some extra treats for you there. Anyway, thanks, Nate.
Yeah, thank you, Jam.
Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. I know that some people have a bit of an issue with the fact that sometimes we use long words and all that sort of stuff, and maybe it's a bit highfalutin. But
there you go. You couldn't just use the word posh. You had to use the word highfalutin. Even your pretentious words are pretentious.
I said it with the missing G at the end, like it was some kind of cowboy thing.
It doesn't have a G at the end. It's not highfalutin. It's highfalutin, isn't it? Like all good DVD releases, we have previously deleted scenes, and this is that bit now. Enjoy.
Well, I had to do some study in Hebrew, and one of the books that we had to look at was the book of Jonah. And I read through the book of Jonah, and it's brilliant. It's absolutely amazing, and lots of our kids will know the book of Jonah really, 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 really well. Yeah. And the reason why it works really well for kids is because there's some really good, solid story elements, props and settings and things like that. There's a boat, there's a big fish, there's a vine, there's a worm, there's a sun, all this sort of stuff, right? So whilst I'm studying the book of Jonah, I realized that every element of creation from Genesis 1 is in the story of Jonah. So you've got the cattle are referred to, so you've got the livestock.
Yeah.
You've got the fish of the sea are referred to. You've got the land and the sea and the sky. That's kind of talked about a lot. You've got the storm. So you've got the plant that grows up to provide the shade. You've got the worm that creeps along. You've got the sun. So I was sitting there and I'm reading through it and I'm thinking to myself, James, where are the birds? There aren't any birds. There are no birds in the book of Jonah. And so I started writing this paper to say, there's no birds in the book of Jonah. That's really weird. And then, mind blown, the name Jonah is Hebrew for dove.
Boom.
Boom. Now, you do the whole book of Jonah again, and you see that God sent his dove to the people of Nineveh to proclaim a message of hope, or well, a message of judgment in a way. It's obviously connected with hope and judgment.
By the way, how far did you get into? How many words had you written about? There are no birds in Jonah. No birds at all. Therefore,
not a single
what does Jonah mean?
bird.
Yeah.
Let me just check that. So it was brilliant. So I then went back and I read through the account of the flood story and when Noah sends out the birds and he sends out the Jonah. So I then wrote Jonah chapter 1 as though Dr. Seuss had written it. And it was called The Dove Without Love.
Whoa.
And it was basically all about this, like God sent this dove to get up from his nest and go and tell the people all this sort of stuff. And it was really good fun. I mean, I suggest you should rewrite almost everything as though Dr. Seuss had written it.
Okay.
And
the Dr. Seuss Bible, that's a good
idea.
idea.
And
DSIV.
And the brilliant thing is to see part of the reason why. So Jonah's the only one who does anything wrong, who goes against God's command or his appointment in the book of Jonah. And that's the sort of the tension is, will Jonah be as compassionate and gracious and hopeful in the face of judgment as God is? Will he think that repentance ought to be granted even to the Ninevites?